Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the We Build Black Mavens IO conference. Happy Friday. We have come to the last panel of the week. I am your MC and panelist, Danielle Skeen, and I'm happy to be here with you again. If you tuned in earlier this week, you know we've had some amazing women sharing their truths, tapping us into what they do for a living, and today is nothing less. We have some amazing ladies lined up. Today we're going to be talking about forward thinking. So when you think of futuristic technology, all the cool things, AR, AI, blockchain, all of that. We have amazing Black women who are in these fields who are going to share their stories and drop some gems. Before we get into the panel, I want to make sure that we shout out our sponsors, JP Morgan Chase. They're sponsoring this session today, but a fun fact about them is that they are actually our very first sponsors. So shout out to you all for being great partners since day one. And, you know, we continue to welcome the partnership and the support. So for all of the ladies here who are tuned in all across the world, you are in for a treat. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about the future. The past few days, we talked about getting through the pandemic. We talked about careers and propelling and moving forward, but in the same mindset of moving forward, we're thinking about the future. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these amazing women go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the question. So we'll go in the order of Charlene, Angelica, and then Mackenzie.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. My name is Charlene Atlas, and I work on creating an empowering and inclusive future through AR and VR technology. I work at Facebook Reality Labs as an interaction designer with researchers, scientists, engineers, and we work on the 5 to 10 year out future of computing. And so it's pretty fun. And I've worked at Microsoft as well on things such as Kinect and the HoloLens. And I live in the Seattle area and excited to have the discussion today.
Awesome. Welcome, Charlene. Angelica?
Awesome. Thanks so much. And it is such an honor to be here with these amazing women who are just killing the game. So I definitely feel humbled. My name is Angelica Willis. I am a software engineer and AI researcher at Google Health. I work on applying computer vision to medical images, like CT scans and X-rays, and helping detect and classify different types of cancers, and just helping doctors make better care decisions. I went to undergrad at North Carolina A&T, where I studied computer science. I went to graduate school at Stanford University, where I focused on artificial intelligence and human-computer interaction. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I've been at Google for about 2 years.
Nice. Welcome. And Mackenzie.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie Slaughter. I am a founder of Powerhouse Capital and Alts Foundation. So Powerhouse Capital is an investment firm, a multi-alternative asset investment firm. We focus on venture capital and private equity within fintech. And so we build different future finance solutions. You might have heard of cryptocurrency, or NFTs, or any type of decentralized finance. We build it, we buy it, we acquire these different solutions, and we try to make, the ultimate goal is to try to make this space more inclusive, and make help bridge the wealth gap. At Alts Foundation, we focus on training fund managers. So it is a program to help more professionals get into the alternative investment space. So when I mean alternative investments, those are investments or assets that are separate from stocks and bonds, right? We all hear about, trading stocks and stuff, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can invest in, like real estate, tech startups, etc. And that's I've been in this space for a very long time. I'm not going to date myself, but I'm not going to tell on myself.
That's all good.
I went to
awesome.
I went to Hampton University. And then got my MBA at Hofstra University.
Shout out to you. Shout out to all the schools. And these titles, these fields, I'm personally excited. Like, I think I'm going to forget that I'm the moderator and, just kind of geek out, because I am personally just so fascinated with this space, and the fact that there are Black women who are a part of these emerging technologies, it gives me a certain sense of just like assurance that we are going to be in a more inclusive space, right? Like things are good, the gaps are going to be closed because people like us are in these rooms. But you know, to kick us off with the first question, because let me get through these because I know the people listening are going to have a lot more. But it seems like each of you, when you think of these future technologies, you found your niche, right? So whether it be blockchain, whether it be AI, whether it be AR, VR, you found your space. So can you tell us a little bit about what got you particularly interested in your field? And we'll have, let's say, Angelica kick us off.
Sure. Yeah. So when I was trying to decide like what to major in undergrad, I had a really hard time because I was just interested in literally everything. I knew I wanted to go into STEM, but beyond that, I like tried bioengineering for a while, loved it, but then I started getting into like architecture, and then I did this internship at NASA where I was doing ecological forecasting research, and so I was just kind of all over the place. And I just like wanted to do all the things, and I really had to sit down and kind of think about, okay, what are the common threads in, there's got to be something, right? I knew that I just wanted to leverage STEM and technology to help people. And there's so many ways that you can do that. And so I saw computer science as like this kind of common thread where you kind of need it for everything, whether it's like driverless car technology or, running NASA space satellites or, just about everything these days you need computer science to make it happen. So I figured that was my shot at choosing without really choosing, and I could kind of go into a particular domain like later on. And that's exactly what I did. I kind of followed this path of really trying to find ways to leverage computer science to scale impact. And AI is a really great way to do that. I see artificial intelligence, machine learning as a way to democratize access in a lot of ways. And so I do that in my everyday job at Google now, working in healthcare. We can build models that can detect, say, breast cancer, for example, as good, if not better than radiologists. So we call that superhuman performance. And, that makes a big difference in like, your everyday like hospital doctor visit here in the US, because it maybe like speeds things up. But, it really dramatically expands access globally to lower and low middle income countries. So that's kind of how I got into computer science and AI, just trying to find a way to leverage something that I love. I love coding, just problem solving, and finding a way to apply that to something that could help a lot of people.
Love that. Love that. Mackenzie, let's hear about you. And, I think you're in probably one of the newer of the new industries here. So, when you think of, your world, when it thinks of blockchain and crypto, what inspired you to get into that field?
Sure. So,
and you're a founder. So let's talk on that too, right? Because not only are you in this industry, you're actually a founder. So let's hear from that perspective as well.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the last part first. Okay. So, in short, there aren't very many places for people of color and Black women that are financial innovators. I consider myself a financial innovator. I'm addicted to trying to find out how to bridge this wealth gap in this country. And that was totally by accident. After business school, I was my whole intent was to go into private equity and make a lot of money, right? That's why you go to business school. When the financial crisis happened, the 2008 financial crisis happened, I decided to venture off on my own, which is the worst time to start a startup or a business. And I kind of noticed that there was a lot of issues, within alternative investments, not just cultural bias, but also innovation bias. And so my background, before that, I went to school for mathematics and computer science. I was fortunate enough to intern at NASA Langley and also work at NASA Langley while I was studying at
I'm
Hampton.
talking to you. I told you I would be fangirling.
That's where I interned as well, NASA Langley. Yep.
Yeah.
I interned at NASA in Maryland at the Goddard Space Flight Center.
Yeah. Wow. This is amazing. Wow. This is okay. We did another panel. Thanks. We did another panel. Sorry, Mackenzie, but you ladies are awesome. Let's just say that.
That's awesome. That's weird. That we're all on this call together. But yeah, I just, my background is in technology. I don't like to code, even though I can. I'm very creative. I like being creative. And so after school, I bounced between like science and art because that's how my mom raised me. I was fortunate enough to start in tech. I like to say I started in tech in kindergarten, in the 80s. I won't say when, but in the 80s, IBM adopted my elementary school.
Oh, it looks like we might have lost you, Mackenzie. Oh, right when it was getting good. All right, we'll give her a second to come back. Charlene, do you want to chime in from a AR standpoint, how you kind of ventured into your niche?
Sure. So interestingly, as Mackenzie was just saying, I also love science and art together. And so when I was a kid, I always wanted to make video games because video games are that mixture of engineering plus there's a lot of creativity in making them. And so I started out in games and I went to.
That my mom.
Oh, are you back?
Are you back, Mackenzie?
You good?
Yeah, I hope so. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. We lost you for a second. Okay. So do you want to yeah. Charlene was she took the baton, but you're back.
You can continue. I can wrap up later.
No. Go ahead. You're here now. We got you. While we got you, let's let you finish.
Okay, so I'll just wrap it up. I don't even know where I stopped, but
you were talking about IBM adopted your elementary school.
Right. So IBM adopted my elementary school, and I was fortunate enough to just be on a computer. I've literally been on a computer since I was 5. There has not been a single day that I have gone without technology, which is, could be good or bad. And so I just grew up my aunt and uncle are engineers, so it just grew up in this environment. And was very fortunate enough. And then my high school teacher forced me to take a computer science class at 16. And then 2 years later, I'm interning at NASA. So that is my foundation. That is like very transformational experience that not many people get to have that access at such an early age. And so but technology is cool. I prefer to be creative. After undergrad at Hampton, I went to design school, then I went to business school, and I just kind of flopped back and forth between science and arts and throughout my whole 20s. And I didn't figure out what I wanted to do until I went into finance. And then I realized within finance, specifically fintech, financial technology, I could do anything I want. I could do all these things. I could be creative. I can be use my analytical hat, and so it's just it's like being in a. I ran a lab for many years, a fintech lab for many years. So I can just create and test and iterate, and it's great.
Nice. And so much of your story makes sense as to why you're working so hard to close these gaps, right? And you want to make sure that access, because you being able to have access to tech at such a young age and have that help you transition to where you are now, you must see some of those benefits. So that's probably a part of what's propelling you to do the work that you do, which is super awesome. So thank you for sharing that. And then Charlene, you can go back and kick us off with your story as well, fellow NASA.
Yeah, similarly, yeah, definitely access is important because I went to a science and tech high school that was right next to NASA Goddard. So I did a high school internship actually at NASA Goddard. So yeah, definitely access was really important. And so I guess what I was saying before was I've always loved video games. I grew up playing games with my brother. And I just really wanted to create that same feeling for people, like that experience of having fun with people that they care about. And so I went into USC, who, when I joined, they were just starting their Game Pipe program, basically a computer science program that's focused in making video games. So it was partnered with the cinema school. So you learned about animation, you learned about sound design, as well as programming and all of that. And so that was really great and helped me transition to Xbox, where I could work on games, some of the new Kinect motion controller games that were coming out. And I just always focused on making sure people have fun while they're here, and creating those moments for people. And so while I was at Microsoft, my test team, I was a test engineer at first. We transitioned to working on HoloLens, which was the first mixed reality headset. And so while I was on that project, I switched to design because I realized that even though test is a great role for being an advocate for the user, design, you get to be kind of at the beginning of the process and understand, like, why are we making this thing? Is it fun? Like all of those things, rather than focusing on like functional issues. And so I realized that's where I needed to be. And so I transitioned to design. And so after that experience on HoloLens, I got to go to Facebook Reality Labs and work on this far future reality work that I'm really excited about, just enabling people, all kinds of people around the world, to connect with each other and be able to do things they never thought they could.
It's awesome. It's so inspiring, everybody's story, right? You know, sometimes we think it's so personal to us, but when you share it in a forum like this, people can find different bits and pieces of it to relate to. So thank you, ladies, for sharing that. So the next question for each of you is, now that we've kind of tapped into why you got into the area that you're in, what are some of the most interesting applications in that particular technology that you've seen? And then what are some ways that you think it can be used in the future? And like, I'll caveat, I know a lot of y'all are probably working on some things that you can't share just yet. So I will let you know now, don't get caught up in the spirit and lose your job. So whatever you can share about the future, definitely share that. But I think most importantly, like, what interests you, right? I think sometimes for us, like me, I'm not in these fields, so everything is cool. When you're working in it, it becomes just like your everyday monotonous thing. So like, what keeps you interested? Mackenzie, you can go first. You're on mute.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. There we go. Yep.
I first want to explain the field that I'm actually in. So briefly, fintech is financial technology. Blockchain is basically a distributed ledger. So think like an accounting, when you have to keep records of your debts, right? And or keep a record of what you spent and what you earned. Um, Blockchain is similar like that. It's just that it's immutable. So you cannot change the records. You can't change the records. It's there forever. And it's open data, so it's out there for everybody to see. Cryptocurrency is the application of blockchain within finance. That's how I like to describe it. So it stores value. Your That financial value is stored on the blockchain and is recorded for forever on the blockchain, and also for everyone to see, which can be a little bit scary. Um, some of the things that are happening in this space outside of cryptocurrency, you might have heard of Bitcoin, but other things that are happening in this space that's really cool, I would say, is decentralized finance. So that is technology, blockchain technology, where you are basically creating a bankless bank, as I like to say. So you're able to get a loan. You can go right on your computer, and you can go and get a loan if you have cryptocurrencies or digital assets. You can use that as a way to get an asset backed loan. I think that's really cool. You can trade. You can do all kind of things like staking, yield farming, where you can, it's like a savings account on assets. So instead of getting like point, what are they giving us, 0.05% or 0.5% right now, you're getting
Mhm.
like 500% or 50%, in a short time, not, over the course of maybe, some programs run for 6 months, some programs run for 12 months. And people have never had access to that type of wealth building before. So you can put in like $2,000 and people are turning that into like $50,000 in like 3 to 6 months. I
Oh,
think
we
that's
gotta
really
talk.
interesting, and helps us. Yeah, that helps us bridge this, because we're 400 years behind.
Oh, I think we lost her again, but let me give her a minute because I know she was mid-sentence. It was just getting juicy. I was gonna ask her how I can do that. Payday is coming up. Everybody wants to know how to flip the paycheck. Oh, all right. I'm hesitant to leave, but I know that we wanna keep it going. So we'll Charlene, you're always the backfill for some reason. So um okay. Are you back? Technology, right? Like we love it, but then there's
Yeah,
times where
I'm
it just
sorry about that. I'm just having a bad day. I don't know. This has never happened to me before. I don't know what's going on. I apologize for that. But
oh
just being able to, our people, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, our people are about 400 years behind in wealth building. With cryptocurrency, that closes the gap to like 40 years, right? Which is still
Mm.
behind, but it's not, that's one lifetime. That's one lifetime. So that would mean that our children, and our grandkids will be able to attain wealth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is non-fungible tokens, NFTs. You've probably heard of art
Mhm.
NFTs, where people are basically buying JPEGs, which is like a digital form of art, or any kind of digital asset, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are are very valuable because they are scarce. So you may have like one, that an artist may have one picture, one digital picture, right? Um, and thousands of people could want it. So that means there's a high demand. So it drives the value up. But the same thing can be used for other assets, not just art. So I'm really interested in that. You can do that for digital assets. So you can do that for like a domain that's very popular. If you own it, you can sell it. You can auction it off and sell it to the highest bidder. You could also do this with, there's digital real estate. I'm a little biased on that. So right now, people can actually buy, um, where you live, the digital representation of your address right now. That's a little creepy to me. So like people are buying
Wait.
up, um, countries in the digital space. This is digital, right? So they're not buying the actual country, but they're buying the land in the metaverse, what we call the metaverse, and they're buying that land up. And we don't even know about it. We don't know about it. So that's happening.
Wait,
Not
so
to scare
someone
you,
can buy
but
someone else's property without the person who actually owns the property knowing in a
yeah,
digital
because
sense?
it's digital. It's in the digital world, so it's in the
So somebody can
metaverse.
drive by my
The
house and say, I like that. I want to own it digitally and do that.
But if somebody else already owns it, then you got to buy it from them.
My own house, my own digital house. Okay.
Right, right.
All right.
Digital representation of your house. Yeah, if
House.
somebody bought it, you're going to buy it from them. There's no laws in this digital world, right? This
Yeah.
metaverse, there's no law. I don't think we're ever going to have any laws, in that world. That's why we create. That's why people created it in the first place.
Nice.
So people are buying digital representations of planets and all kind of stuff. But on a brighter note, you can actually use NFT for a real asset. So if you wanted to sell your house or sell your business, and you can use the NFT to kind of prove, it's like proof of purchase, prove that you've paid that you that you paid for it, and
Mhm.
that you have access to it. Um, and then uh, yeah, I'll leave it at that because I can talk on and on. But those are the two
I
big
feel
things
like
that are
we
happening
could
right
have a
now
whole
that are very
panel
exciting.
just on that world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, let's have Charlene. So, what excites you when we think of the AR space, when we think of mixed reality, we think of VR, all of that? What's interesting to you?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is with VR, it's really easy to create an experience that lets someone understand someone else's point of view.
Mhm.
So, for example, Oculus has a group called VR for Good that has a lot of interesting apps. They've done experiences for kids that are in the hospital. They've done lots of interesting things. There's even an Emmy-nominated basically VR film in a way, an experience called Traveling While Black that basically shows you like the Jim Crow era and like when you had to use the green book to get around to know where it was safe to travel and all of that. And so it's definitely different, like being in the experience versus like just watching it on a screen. So I'm really excited about all the different things people will be able to create with VR, and then and as well as connecting people. So actually, in the app Rec Room during the pandemic, I had my baby shower in in VR. Basically, we're able to have people come and be in this world that my friend Paula Paulino, a VR educator and entrepreneur, made for us in Rec Room, and it was so cool because like I hadn't seen anybody for months. I wasn't expecting to have a baby shower at all because it's like pandemic and all this stuff's going on. But like my friends were there, my family was there, some of my coworkers. Like I was introducing people to other people. It was just like it was so interesting to like have a baby shower, even though I had given up on it for months already, just with the way things were. So that was really great. And yeah, even my brother was there and he hasn't even met my son in real life. So I really love that possibility. And that's what's already happening. But in the future, for AR, I really care about like getting rid of screens. Like right now, all of our digital technology is kind of trapped in these 2D panes that we carry around and sit in front of and everything. I really want to bring all of that out into the world with us. And so you can just have one life instead of like you have your digital life and your real life and you're just constantly trying to find ways to switch between them. Just having one life that has everything that you need. And then in the far future, being present piece again with AR, you could do things such as have people in your space, in your real space, as if they're with you. So imagine how much easier the pandemic would be if we could just have like, oh, I have my mom right here, with me, instead of video call. I mean, this is very nice. Video calls are good. And Facebook also has a great, the portal, which is great for video calling. But doing something with like avatars in your space would be so amazing to bring the world together, which is Facebook's mission in the end. So, yeah.
That's so cool. And I could see the transition, right? Like, I think a lot of people were forced to be digital and virtual, right? So a lot of grandmas, aunties, and then we all had to talk them through, like, press the red button on the top, right? But I think they are so used to that now. So a lot of what you're saying, Charlene, I think is going to be that new normal. Like they've adjusted to the screen, but what does it look like to do like a cheers, like, right here? Like, I think that's so exciting. But both with what both of you said, and I think even with whatever Angelica's about to say, there's this like excitement and like level of like fear sometimes, right? Because you're just like for me, I watch Black Mirror and I'm like, wait, but then I'm like, oh, that's really cool though. Like that's just so forward thinking. So it's always an interesting conversation to have when you think of what we're doing in this space. But I think it's just it's almost miraculous, right? Like what we can create essentially out of nothing, just people having ideas.
And I'll just say one last thing that Facebook and particularly Facebook Reality Labs as well, we have some responsible innovation principles that we've put in place for that exact reason, because there's so many, you can't just make something and not think about these things. And so we're being very deliberate and we're trying to be, as public as possible, doing things like this to like make sure we're doing it in the right way and everybody feels comfortable in the journey that we're going.
Love it. I feel better now. Okay, thanks. Angelica, what about you? So when we think of AI, you know, what's interesting you? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but just opportunities to democratize access. I talked about the healthcare use case. I work with radiological images, but there's so many domains that AI can help with. Ophthalmology, pathology. So all computer vision focused, where you're determining like what type of cancer cells are being put under the microscope, and so you can come up with more dynamic treatment plans for patients, and that kind of thing. Also dermatology. I think one cool use case is, being able to, I think, someone gets a weird spot on their skin, the first thing they do is go to Google, right? So like one thing that has been really interesting to see is the work in the dermatology team. So being able to classify different skin conditions, and yeah, so the healthcare space, I think there's so much opportunity there. But I'd also say education. When you talk about really closing the education gap globally, I think AI has a real opportunity to leapfrog a lot of the education systems that we have. And particularly, so in grad school, I focused on smart tutoring systems. So there are so many different ways that students like to learn. We often hear about visual learners versus, people who like to read things in books and that kind of thing. But there's so many different nuances to, determining the best way to teach a student a topic based off of, their interests and, their past experiences, and having smart tutoring systems that are, hyper aware in this type of manner. I think could really unlock a lot of doors and provide some really creative educational experiences. One of the projects that I worked on in related to smart tutoring systems was this next generation chatbot that was context aware about the books that children were reading. And so studies show that kids who read first, like with their parents at home, they associate reading more so with love and family and fun. And kids whose first interaction with it is through school, they sort of associate it more so with a chore or something, stressful that you get yelled at if you don't learn it, So taking these ideas from, these sort of social identifiers that we've found with children, we've been able to create these smart tutoring systems that can really interface with a student about the book that they're currently reading, and can ask the child questions about the book and vice versa, and really have this rich experience. And so I think there's a little ways to go, in the whole chatbot domain of, having very deep, real conversations, that are educationally relevant. But I definitely see a lot of opportunity there for sure.
I love that. This is like all super inspiring, and it makes me excited to look forward to, right? But I think a lot of us are in the technology industry, so it's easier for us to, not only understand and take heed to wanting to be a part of these things and adopt these things, but we know and we've seen that when it comes to mass adoption, that's been a challenge across the board generally with tech. But when we think of a lot of what you all are doing in this very futuristic space, there has to be some challenges that come up. So would love to hear from each of you, just kind of in your respective field. What are some of the hurdles that, you guys are trying to overcome now? Or you ladies, let me correct that, because, women. But, what are some of these hurdles, and, what do you think needs to happen so that whether it's AI, or especially when we think of like blockchain, becomes like the standard. So we'll have maybe we'll do Mackenzie, Angelica, and then Charlene, just to kind of kick us off with what are the challenges and how do you see us overcoming them?
Right. Okay. Let's hope this works this time. I think the
Good
number one
vibe.
challenge within, yes, good vibes. The number one challenge within cryptocurrency and blockchain is that people know what Bitcoin is, and they know that it's virtual money. They know it's digital money, but they're not educated on the technology behind it, the blockchain technology. So everyone's going into Bitcoin. The narrative is buy Bitcoin and hold it, and don't use it. But it's supposed to be a store of value. It's supposed to be money. You're supposed to go to the gas station and pay with Bitcoin. You're supposed to pay your electric bill with Bitcoin. And so that kind of got lost because there's this wave with finance, and with money comes greed. And so everyone's trying to get to the money right now. No one cares about the technology. And then within the technology, so you have different networks. So Bitcoin is a blockchain network. Ethereum is another blockchain network. They were the first two. Ethereum is a lot faster than Bitcoin, right? The transactions are faster, but also the transaction fees or the gas fees are very, very high. And there's also a very high failure rate within your transactions. So, for example, if I'm trying to buy if I have Ethereum and I'm trying to buy, let's say I'm buying my own token, I have my own token, my company has a token house, and I'm trying to buy my tokens, and I don't give it enough gas, then that transaction fails, but I'm also charged. Then I got to try again, and I'm literally wasting money. So we call that. So the solution to that is layer two. That's layer one. And so right now there's a lot of smart people trying to create this layer two for both Bitcoin and Ethereum, and to where the transactions are cheaper, faster, and also you can convert your fiat, your US dollars into crypto in one single transaction, are very fast, right? It's There's only a handful of places where you can go. You have to go in exchange to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum uh, right now. And then the last thing I would say is the scams. We call them rug pulls. So anyone can go and create a cryptocurrency, and they can go shout about it on Facebook and Twitter. People can put money into it, they can buy it, and then whoever holds the most tokens can pull their money out, right? They can just cash out at any time. And so that leaves all the other people, and that nosedive, that crashes the value, right, of the price of the cryptocurrency. So the other people that are getting into it, that just got into it, are left holding the bag, an empty bag that's valueless. And so that's really got to stop. A lot of people don't understand that um, cryptocurrencies are supported. Cryptocurrencies support the use of technology. So if there's not a strong a use case or a purpose behind that cryptocurrency, if the purpose is to just get rich, then that's not that's what is it, get rich quick scheme.
Mm-hmm.
It's a scam. It's a scam. And so there are we have technical papers as well. You have white papers, you have yellow papers that are supposed to be used to explain what the utility is or what the purpose is for that token. So, for example, for my token, I consider it a social token. So we're a private equity firm. There's two sides to a private equity firm. You're acquiring an asset, and then you're trying to grow the value of that asset. So let's say you acquire a business like a laundromat business, right? Just something simple, a laundromat business. You still need to grow that business, right? So you can flip it. It's similar to like flipping real estate, right? You
Mm-hmm.
buy a house, you fix it up, and then you sell it to the highest bidder. So for us, we need experts to help increase the value of our portfolio companies. So we use our token as a reward system to reward that production capital. So, but that's just, there's many different types of use cases. There's more tech. Our use case is not technical. There are other tech use cases that are very technical, but the consumer, their financial consumer, doesn't understand this stuff, so they don't know what to invest in. You know, the stock market is very well regulated, so you know if you're investing in a penny stock or if you're investing in like a blue chip like a Facebook or
Yeah.
you know, General Electric or you know whatever top or Google or Microsoft. You know that if you buy a stock, you know if you buy Google stock or or Microsoft stock, you know you're not going to lose. There's a higher percentage that you will not lose totally lose your money. It may go down, right, because performance of the company may go down, so their earnings may be down for a season, but in the long term you're going to make you're going to make you're going to earn something. You're going to make some money off of that. And so that just with the industry just growing and stabilizing, that was my hope is that that will stabilize over time. And we don't have any regulations. We just out here just doing stuff. So the U.S. government has not given us very much regulations, and I'll be nice. I just think that they're using cryptocurrency and not telling everybody. I think that's why we don't have regulations, because they're in fact using it themselves, right? And whenever they get done using it, then we'll have regulations. I won't go much into that, but I think that we're lacking transparency and we're lacking education.
Love it. So once we get through those hurdles, we might get to a place where just like everyone can easily talk about, the stocks that they're trading, they can also have those conversations about the tokens that they're trading as well, but more educated. So I see a lot of social media folks who are all of a sudden crypto experts, right? But,
Right.
Have a lot of chat, but not understanding the technology behind it. I think you're spot on, where when we get to a space where we know what we're talking about in totality, then we'll see things get a little bit more standardized. Love that.
Correct.
And Angelica, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the challenges around machine learning and AI kind of taking center stage and really being standards of excellence in kind of all fields are very ubiquitous, would be data. So a lot of people, when they think about machine learning, they think about the models. They think about, these state-of-the-art models that are being developed by the Googles and the Facebooks and the Microsofts of the world and are, hitting these benchmarks on these kind of predefined tasks like, detecting cats, dogs, and making those kind of classifications or whatever that kind of toy problem is, like getting state-of-the-art accuracy and like, wow, this is amazing. But when you actually implement these models for real world tasks, you often need a lot more data than you maybe previously thought. And there's a lot of challenges around data. And so I would say, like, as a AI researcher, I would say only maybe 20% of my time is focused on, building the best state-of-the-art models. But most of that time is focused on data engineering, making sure the data is clean and not biased. And these are really hard things to do. So bias is, something that's very widely talked about these days in AI. And that bias kind of comes from two main sources. So one is kind of like the data itself that you're getting, the real world. The data might be completely clean and realistic for your use case, but the bias exists in the real world and the systems that our world abides by, right? And so you kind of bring that bias that exists in the world through your data into your model, and you're kind of reinforcing that, right? So if you take, there was a case that came up, a while back where there was actually a model being used to determine whether someone should be released on bail or whether they should go back to jail, after, going through the legal system. So in this particular instance, the model was sending a lot more people of color back to jail and releasing a lot more, white folks. And that was a huge issue. And where did that come from? There was something like inherently wrong with the data, or is there something inherently wrong with society and how these systems are established in the first place? And the model is just sort of reinforcing that bias, and that's so dangerous. The other type of bias that exists is just issues with the data itself. Maybe, and even in a perfect world, you could have, issues with the data. So an example of that, I think a few years ago, a lot of people were, this data set came out for lung cancer detection. And a lot of people were getting, these state-of-the-art models that were like, we've solved this use case for, we can detect, lung cancer with near perfect accuracy. And, there was a lot of celebrating happening. And then come to find out, doctors had actually, so they had taken these x-rays, they kind of drew circles around the cancers and they kind of wiped it off. So you couldn't really see it with the naked eye, but the model was able to pick up on these circles drawn onto the x-rays. And we basically had these giant circle detectors running around, supposedly as lung cancer detectors. So it's so important to have data outside of your training pipeline. So you're not training on a small set of, or a small but diverse set of your data, so that you can make sure that those types of biases in the data don't kind of make it into your final model. But that's something that's a little bit more solvable than, the issues with data just being representative of a really imperfect world that we live in. And so that's definitely a challenge that I spend a lot of time thinking about. A lot of people that I work with at Google and throughout the broader AI community spend a lot of time thinking about. And I think kind of a final point around this, a challenge that I see is really a lack of understanding. So, machine learning should not just be understood by the engineers who are building it or the salespeople who are selling it. Of course, all users need to understand how their data is being used, and how it's impacting their lives in ways they maybe don't even realize, for good and for bad, right? But also the policymakers. I think there is often a huge, and I think this comes into play with a lot of technologies, lack of regulation and just a lack of, foresight into what the issues could be in the future and what kind of bad actors could, what kind of, issues bad actors could cause when we don't really know the full extent of the consequences of the things that we're building, right? So I definitely believe that in order for AI to really take center stage the way I think it can in the future, is really thinking long and hard about how we educate the masses and our policymakers, our watchdogs, and everyone to make sure that we're all building products that help people and don't reinforce biases and don't hurt people. So Yeah, I
Love
think those
that.
are
I
really
love
cool.
that. And I love that you talked about the diversity as well, right? Like I know that's something that's super crucial on the Microsoft end as well, where like, we've gotten jabbed for certain things where it's like it doesn't detect certain black skin, right? Or it doesn't detect urban ethnic features. So, there's so many underlying layers when you think of, how do you make this thing work? So it's awesome to hear that while you all are focusing on, these ideal models and, the data, you're making sure that it's going to be reflective of a larger subset of folks, but also something that's going to be applicable and fair in the real world, which is awesome.
And yeah, and I'd love to add to what Angelica said as well, because in the AR VR space too, we're thinking about AI as well, especially for the far future work in terms of like making sure we only show people what they need to see based on their context and all of that. And so it's definitely is important to make sure people understand what kind of data they're sharing, how they can control the data, all of that. And that's one of the principles I mentioned earlier, which is never surprise anyone. Is so I think that kind of aligns with what Angelica was saying of like you shouldn't be surprised as to like what you're doing. You should understand what you're doing and like be knowledgeable and aware of what's happening. And then to the earlier point about data, I love that point, because the whatever data you put into a system, that's the kind of thing that's going to come out at the other end, right? And so that actually came up for Facebook. We talked a couple years ago at a conference. Lade Obamahiti, who used to be at our company, she was a Black woman who was on the Portal team, and so Portal is the video device that I mentioned, and it has an AI controlled camera. And so she noticed that she would be the main person talking and like waving her hands, and it was always following her white coworkers as if they were talking, and she was like, "Oh, that's something's wrong here." And so she led this whole effort to like make sure that got fixed before we shipped. But like we were just saying earlier, like I think Danielle, you were saying, it's good that we have people in these spaces to notice it, but I mean, it's up to everybody to make sure we make this inclusive future.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you already have the mic. The mic's hot. It seems like, and I don't want to. Like, I feel like when you think of, both the AR and AI space, a lot of those hurdles are essentially the same, right? Like when you're thinking of like data usage, when you're thinking of safety and all of those things. But anything else that you want to add before we go into our next question?
Oh, sure. Well, in terms of the question of hurdles, for VR, definitely comfort can be a hurdle because right now we can use our computer without putting anything on our face, right? So it's a lot easier than putting a headset on. But I mean, we're working on increasing comfort, like with our Quest devices that we have now, Quest 1 and Quest 2. They're wireless; you don't have to connect to a PC, and so as time goes on, it's going to get easier and easier and more comfortable. So I think that's one thing we're working on. And then for AR, we're looking into in the far future, could there be ways to how do you naturally interact with something like AR glasses, right? And so are there ways to have lightweight, wearable controls on your person, like maybe lightweight gloves, other things like that, so that you can type without a keyboard and all of these different things.
I want that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the big thing, is like, how do you make sure you get all the functionality in there and all the technology in there that you need for it to work, but also make it comfortable, because this is a system that you're actually going to be wearing on your body. So
Love that. Love that. I mean, interesting hurdles, but it also seems like as all three of you were talking about it, your teams and your companies are already starting to think of the solution. So it's not one of those things where in any realm it's going to be a dead end and nothing's going to really get to that level of mass adoption. It's just, it seems like we're aware of what the hurdles are, we understand what the issues and the concerns are, and we're making an attempt to start to solve those. But certain things may take a little bit longer than others, which I think is pretty reassuring. So my last question for each of you before we open it up to some of the questions that folks in the audience have, and I'm sure there are probably plenty. There's a lot. This is a tech conference for Black women, right? So we have techies in all levels who are listening and joining in from across the globe, right? We're virtual this time. When we think of closing it out, for your field in particular, what advice would you have for people who, have ambitions on getting into it, right? So I know it's a broad question, but I would say if there's maybe one or two things that you would recommend that they do right now, right? When they leave this session, don't even close your computer, go ahead and do this thing, what would that be? So if someone is interested in AI, but they don't know where to start, what to do yet, what is the thing that you would recommend that they do as it pertains to your field? So we'll just go Mackenzie, Charlene, and Angelica, you can close us out. Mute again. There we go.
Okay, so the first thing you need to, the greatest opportunity in this space is learning how to code smart contracts. Every blockchain network, with the exception of Bitcoin, operates on smart contracts. Smart contract is basically code um, that it's like the virtual money is coded, right? So it's within that smart contract, you can tell the token, you can tell the digital asset or the cryptocurrency what it can or can't do. It is not as difficult as people thinks it is. There are plenty of resources. There are training programs. There are certificate programs you can do from home on demand. And a lot of them are very cheap. There's a lot of free content out there right now. You can literally learn this skill for free. You could probably learn it free on YouTube, just totally for free. It is the number one skill right now in the blockchain space because every smart contract needs to be audited. We don't have enough developers. We don't have enough auditors. To An auditor basically reviews the code to make sure it is there are no entry points where people can hack and steal all the cryptocurrencies or the digital assets, and that's happening a lot. And there's a lot of hackers out there, and when they hack. They steal 500 million, 600 million. So that's a lot of money.
It's not FDIC insured. You can't call anybody about that. That's just money that's lost.
Exactly. And so, and there needs to be a number of people, good hackers that can go find the money or technology, or people that understand the technology that can track where the money went. And so that is the number. And this is a very, I would say, simple skill that pays a lot. So I would say that's the very first thing. The second thing is, if you're not in a position to learn a new skill, these blockchain technology is used by companies. So someone's got to run the business side. And so if you're an accountant, accountants are in great demand in this space as well. Like my company is totally run on the blockchain, and so I need to not only have a smart contract audit, but I would also need to have a financial audit, and I would need an accountant that understands, how these cryptocurrencies work, and understand how I pay my employees and my partners with this currency. So you can use the skills that you have to get into the space, but you do need to do some training, at least to learn the basics of blockchain technology, not even cryptocurrency, but blockchain technology. You need to understand and be able to have a conversation about it. And I think because we have such a labor shortage, I think that's, from what I've seen, that's all that's needed to really get in this space.
Nice. Love it. Hopefully you ladies out there are taking notes, because these are gems that are being dropped right now that many people probably don't even know. So crucial information being shared. All right, Charlene, you're up next.
Yeah, I would say so for VR, you can actually go online right now and you can download the Unity game engine, for example. And I believe it's free for the basic version, and you can make VR apps right now. I mean, you can the Quest and Quest 2 are pretty reasonably priced if you want to be able to actually use a headset to look at what you've made. But you can just download Unity right now, learn about how to make VR apps. And then for AR, we have Spark AR Studio for mobile AR. So I've talked about the far future work I'm doing with glasses, but there's also mobile AR where you can use your phone and you look at a room and you can see like things in your space by looking at your phone, using the phone camera. You can make those for free as well with Spark AR Studio. And there's a huge community making AR effects. And these are effects that can be used on different platforms, like hats and bunny ears and different like facial effects. You can experiment with that for free. And a lot of it you can do without coding. And so those are all things that you can try right now. And if you're looking to get into the field, then you'll have a lot of projects that you can show in interviews. And you can really make anything, whatever you're interested in, you can make with VR or AR, like art, film, games. So yeah, it's really open. Please join us. It's really fun.
That's awesome. Something you can do right now. I love a real life takeaway, right? It's not going to take you another 4 to 8 years of school. Literally, you type in and you can get started. Love that. And Angelica, for folks trying to get into AI, what would you recommend that they do?
Yeah, so AI is pretty broad, and I like to think about it sort of like a spectrum of, being on the sort of cutting edge of research in AI, the theoretical or, research that's happening to progress the entire field forward. And so that is a lot of math and statistical analysis. And so if that's something that like interests you, then kind of dig into that route. But it's on the other end of the spectrum. There's kind of the more like user experience side of, okay, these models are built, but they're not going to work properly if they don't interface into people's online experiences in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that is helpful to them. So there's kind of like that side of like the engineering work that goes into implementing these models into other technologies and into user journeys. And then there's like things in the middle that are like kind of where I am with applying a lot of research papers that come out, like state-of-the-art models and stuff, and applying it to this healthcare domain. So how can we take these really interesting ideas in research and apply them to the real world? So it's not just like, a research paper. At the end of the day, it actually has impact. And so that's another area that you can kind of dive into. So my advice is kind of like figure out where on the spectrum you kind of want to be. And the other piece of advice would be, it can kind of be a little bit overwhelming if you're kind of going online and Googling machine learning, like 101 classes, right? I know like a lot of schools have them online, and you can get into like TensorFlow and building models and that kind of thing. But I really like to start with a passion project, something that you're going to be excited to do every day when it gets really hard and you don't know why things aren't working and you're getting really frustrated with, some systems not having as much, technical support or documentation as you would like. And, it's having that passion that you can always go back to, because you can really, AI really intersects nicely with almost everything, right? Like AI and music, AI and photography, fashion, you name it, you can find an AI application for your passion. So that's really something that I've always gone back to. And what really helped me when I was first learning about machine learning, besides the fact that once you get it to work, it's so it's fascinating, and it's very meaningful when you're able to kind of build something like that. But yeah, so stick with it even when it's difficult, and I think the payoff is pretty huge because AI is everywhere, and it's going to continue to be more ubiquitous. So even if you aren't necessarily interested in that career path, just understanding how it works or how it could be leveraged in your startup or in your whatever your interest is. That's my advice.
I love that. I feel like that was like the perfect summary and like the bow and the cherry on top, right? Because even when you talked about, finding those passion projects and even where you fall on the spectrum, I think that advice is pertinent for all three disciplines here, right? So I love that was a takeaway that you shared with the audience here. And I'm following up with all three of you because I've got questions, and I was super proud of all of you. I'm excited at what you're working on and what's to come. So what we'll do now is turn it over to our producers. Oh, look, we got fancy. The questions are on the screen. All right. So Charlene, what advice would you give to a front-end engineer working on those 2D screens who want to transition into VR and immersive storytelling? I know you gave a bit of advice already, so.
Yeah, those 2D screens. Yeah, I guess we've all been on 2D screens for a long time. And I mean, a lot of it still applies, obviously, but it's just about kind of opening your mind to a new way of thinking about designing UI, right? So like usually when you design a UI, there's no like thinking about what's behind, the UI or what's to the side of, when you're building in spatially in space, you have to think about those kind of things. You have to think about like, how do you make sure someone will see something that or not, they might be looking in a different direction. There's lots of different things to think about. So just like I said, I definitely recommend looking at Unity game engine. And there's lots of tutorials that Oculus has on how to build VR apps that I think would be really helpful to you, and you'd be able to get up and running pretty quickly. And there's tons of examples on the Oculus Store as well of people who make stories with VR, beautiful stories. And so I would just study those and do a passion project, like Angelica said, in VR, and just put yourself out there.
Awesome. All right. And I guess this is open to I'm going to say, Mackenzie, can you recommend places to learn blockchain/smart contracts?
Sure. So I would highly recommend learning from Consensus. Consensus is an organization that helps where a lot of the innovation is coming out of, where a lot of the use cases in smart contract, the use cases for the smart contracts are really coming out of Consensus. So they have a lot of training programs. They have a lot of content online that's free. You can also get a grant just to, if you have a project in mind or something in mind, you can get a grant for that from them. And it's kind of like learn and earn at the same time. And so that's called Consensus. And then there are other platforms that are not as in depth, but are not that focused. Every blockchain has their own I guess repository of information that you can learn, and you can do tutorials um, and learn how to build on their blockchain network. So, but I would recommend learning Ethereum smart contracts first, because everything is pretty much a derivative of what they're doing. So, yeah, start there.
Nice. Are those it for our audience questions? Mr. Producer? Sounds like it. So again, do we have a question? Or it was like it was a comment. I saw like great job or something, which is what I was going to say. How helpful is Unity for VR and AR for jobs?
Very helpful. I use Unity all the time. Lots of us use Unity all the time at work right now. So that's why I was saying, yeah, definitely go and learn Unity. It's what everyone. I mean, there's also Unreal. I love Unreal Engine as well, but we're using Unity mostly at Facebook now.
Thanks. Because these fields are so fascinating and exciting, yes, they are, how have each of you managed to achieve a degree of balance with personal responsibilities and enriching pursuits? It's a good one. It's a tough one. The nods mean they're still figuring it out.
Yeah, I think
Work in progress.
Definitely. I'm still trying to figure out that balance for sure. But I think something that that's helped me is just making sure that the work that I do is meaningful to me and fulfills me, right? There are so many different career paths within AI, and lots of ways to kind of build these super cool, flashy things that are like go to market really quickly, and you can point to like some of the work that you've done and like say it's like out in the world. And then sometimes when you're working in a space like healthcare, it definitely takes there's a long development time to get to a point where you have regulated FDA approved products that can be released. And so it's really important for me that I'm able to kind of keep this positive mindset of this is ultimately going to help a lot of people. And whenever I'm kind of bogged down with the day to day, I kind of just step back and think about like, wow, like we're really at the forefront, at the tipping point of mass adoption in a way that's really going to democratize access. And so I don't know if this is so much of an answer on like how to balance, but it's kind of like a way to kind of step back and reflect on when you're a little bit overwhelmed with everything that's going on at work and balancing personal life, like just kind of reflecting on that kind of helps me refocus on like, okay, the day-to-day stuff is going to eventually kind of blur into this broader impact that we're having, and kind of allows me to like at least de-stress and kind of refocus my efforts.
Nice. Charlene, you want to take a stab at that, or did
I agree. I mean, similarly, I've worked on emerging technologies for a lot of my career, so I've had to. Similarly, I usually can't talk about what I'm working on, or like it's hard. I don't really get to see it out in the world as much. But yeah, I mean, I just had a baby 11 months ago, so I'm still working on rebalancing myself. But I think in general, it's just about like slowing down every once in a while and listening to those around you who might be like, hey, it seems like I don't see you anymore, or like you haven't, you're coming home late and things. Like just kind of take a second and try to step out of whatever you're deeply focusing on, and realize like what's really important to you in your life.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience? How do you each retain your sense of self in fields where Black women are doubly marginalized?
Oh,
That's the real question right there.
yeah.
Well, I'll just quickly say that at least at Facebook, we have a lot of Black communities within the company, and so that's been really helpful, especially during the pandemic and during the summer we had last year with everything that was happening in the community. It's been great to have that community. But even if there's not a community at your office, there's actually if you looked on LinkedIn and other places, there's communities that you can join. Like there's a Black Designers of Seattle community that I'm in, and just try to keep going outside of your scope until you find enough people to collect with and talk with.
Anyone else wanna?
I'll go next. So for me, in running my own businesses, I think in the beginning of my career, I knew early on that I'm not cut out for the corporate, BS and being marginalized after doing all this hard work for predominantly most of my life. But for me, it's more about connecting with other people. There are groups out there, like Charlene said, there are groups that you can join, that of women that are doing, of Black women that are doing the exact same thing that you're doing. You just have to take some time to go and find them. For me, in the beginning, when I first started my company, there was nothing like that. So what I did is I just reached out to Black women that were pretty active on Wall Street, and pretty big on Wall Street. I mean, they're not going to say no to you. We all know what we're up against, right? And you got to have some guidance somewhere. So if there's no peer group, then maybe you can find a mentor to help you or to engage with you, personally and professionally. I think that's really important.
I love that. I think this whole notion of just kind of finding your people, and the reality that your people may not be within your immediate team. For some people, it may not even be in our company, right? Especially for folks who are at startups. But that's the benefit of this tech age, right? Like at the end of the day, we can reach out to people on LinkedIn, on Slack, and in our neighborhoods, to really create our own circle. So it's one of those things where I think it's just a known reality. But a lot of us who are in this, if not all of us who are in this field, are just, challenging the status quo day by day. Every time we show up, into our offices, when we had offices, that was just a form of resistance, right? Like we're saying that we deserve to be here. So, kudos to you ladies again. We've come to the end of all of my questions and all of the questions from the audience. Ladies, Charlene, Angelica, Mackenzie, thank you so much for all of the gems that you shared with us today. Folks who are tuning in, this is the final panel for the Mavens IO conference this year. So thank you for all of you who have been riding with us all week, tuning in, especially for you today on a Friday. If you're on the East Coast, it's pushing 8 p.m. and you're here. So we're just so excited to have you all here. But the conference is not done yet. So on Sunday, we have the grand finale. We have our keynote. So you're going to hear from JJ Digital. And following that, what I'm super excited about is actually the announcement of the hackathon winners. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the hackathon, we have challenged a bunch of amazing Black female techies to, share their ideas. If they had an idea that was going to help with, gender inclusion, civil rights, equal justice, or really just a cool tech idea, they're going to get some money. So Sunday, you want to make sure that you tune in to get some gems from our keynote, but then already here and celebrate the hackathon winners. So thank you all. 6:30 p.m. We're back at Mavens IO. We're signing off today. Have a great weekend, everybody, and make sure you stay in contact with us. Follow us on LinkedIn. Shout out to JP Morgan, our sponsors. Go ahead and follow them, and each of the ladies here, reach out. We don't get enough time to network in person, and you have some amazing women here who could be your mentors and who knows what else, right? So take advantage of the opportunities and the folks that this conference has made available to you. So thank you all. Thank you, ladies.